Thursday here on Birds 365. Sunday's opponent, they're going to bring it against the Philadelphia Eagles. Good test for the Birds. We allow Martin Frank to jump aboard with us. Martin, I love the fact that you always do it from the dark. Martin doesn't try and get outside and get the birds. No, he pulls into his little coffin.
It's too cold and too windy.
It is cold.
Yeah, it's a little chilly.
John and I always get the dog out before we get on the show. Yeah. So, yes, we can attest to the cold. Martin, we appreciate your braving the cold and hopping on board with us. Not bad Eagle news yesterday. They activate the practice window for Jordan Davis. Dallas Goedert was there and said he's planning on being back the first available week he can be, the Bears game after his spot on the IR. And the Eagles didn't make a move for a safety yesterday. Do we read into this that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson will be back in less than 4 weeks because he wasn't placed on the IR?
I wouldn't necessarily read into that just yet. I mean, they don't have to, as long as they put him on IR before Sunday, it doesn't really matter if they do it now or Saturday afternoon or whenever. It seems like an injury that could take a while. I've never had a lacerated kidney, but it looked pretty painful from, watching him, not really being able to walk off the field Sunday night. So I wouldn't be surprised if the IR move still comes. It just might not come until, they know more information, probably like Friday or Saturday or something like that. But definitely, if it does happen, it'll definitely be before the game on Sunday.
Yeah, I thought it was a slight positive, Martin, because, if it's deep back to maybe they just put him on there right away and try to bring in at least another practice squad body. They have Marquise Blair, but you probably want another. But maybe it's, if they do activate Jordan Davis by Saturday, you need a spot for that. So it could be as simple as that, manipulating the roster that way. Sure. I think it says more, though, about Reed Blankenship. At least for the short term, they want to see what Reed can do with this safety position instead of panicking and getting, I think Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh kind of spoiled Eagles fans into believing, you can just get that type of player at each position this late in the season. That's not the case. But you can go out to other practice squads and maybe get a guy and pilfer a guy you want. I think that says more about Reed Blankenship, and they want to see him. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And also, you got to look at it, if you're bringing someone in off the street, I don't know. I've heard the name Jaquiski Tart mentioned.
No, you didn't hear that. Where did you hear that? Were you on the phone with Jaquiski's sister?
Yeah,
come on. You didn't really hear his name.
But my point is, like, if you're going to try to bring in someone off the street, like they did with Sue or Linval Joseph, it's different at the safety position because A, you have to know a lot more about the defense, and B, you have to be like in pretty darn good shape. I'm not suggesting that Linval and Sue aren't, but they're not running around as much as, someone who would be thrown in there at safety. And, it'd probably take a couple of weeks for them to get up to speed. And maybe you're figuring by then, there's a chance that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson will be back or pretty much close to it. I mean, you can kind of, if it's like a 4 week or less type of injury, you could probably take your chances with a guy like Reed Blankenship, and if you have to put throw Kayvon Wallace in there every now and then too, you could probably get away with that. But if it was like a season-ending thing, they might go out and get somebody.
Yeah.
In that case, give it a couple weeks to get up to speed, and then you make a nice playoff run. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. I mean, it does seem like Chauncey will be back at some point. We just don't know when just yet.
Yeah, and from the Dallas Goedert perspective, I mean, that was a big positive. Obviously, Dallas is not eligible until December 18th, but man, he ditched the sling. He was happy. I was shocked. I turned around and there was Dallas, and he's not only talking, he's willing to talk in detail about the injury. So the fact that there was no dislocation, no torn ligaments, little bit of a small fracture in his labrum. That's as positive as it gets for the Eagles. I mean, it seems to me he's going to be back against the Bears on December 18th. And this offense hasn't been the same without Dallas Goedert. They've done some nice things. I mean, anytime you can run for 363 yards, Martin, that's pretty impressive. But the passing game has not been the same without Dallas Goedert. Is that fair to say?
It is, and they're going to have a pretty big test against the Titans because the Titans have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. I think they give up like 85 yards a game, something like that, on the ground. So, the Eagles aren't going to rush for 363 yards again like they did against the Packers. And
I'm taking the under. I've taken the under all week.
Yeah.
Under 363.
Under 363.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be close. No, I don't. No, absolutely, they're not going to run for 363 yards against the Titans, and Hurts probably isn't going to run for 157 or whatever it was against the Packers. So, they're going to have to try to, win by passing the ball. And yeah, that's kind of been an issue without Goddard. I mean, they can't really rely on any of the other tight ends and Jack Stahl or Grant Calcaterra or Tyree Jackson to pick up Dallas Goedert's load. And, maybe you throw more to Quez Watkins, which is what they've been doing the last couple of weeks. But, yeah, they're going to be tested definitely as far as passing the ball.
Martin, I put this to Johnny Mac just before we punch you up. Maybe you heard the question while you were on hold getting ready to jump in. The Eagles there's a chance that Jordan Davis could be activated for the game. They activated him to practice this week, and they have to make a game day decision come Saturday. If he's a go, somebody probably has to come off that defensive line for the roster on Sunday's game. John talked about, well, it depends on they're going to play over the center and with a 5-man front. I'll give Jonathan Gannon benefit of the doubt. He knows who he wants to run out there, and he doesn't even know because you got to get into the game and they're down and distance and the score of the game and everything else. So we can't plot out every single guy on the defensive line, every single play, but they got to make a decision as to who's actually going to be active for the game. If Davis is back, is one of their current defensive linemen inactive?
Yeah, it would seem like it. I mean, Milton Williams would seem to be the odd man out. I mean, he's been playing well and they like him and everything, but I mean, you already have, if Jordan Davis is activated, you got 5 guys. I mean, it's hard to rotate in. It's hard to rotate in all those guys, in the game and everything like that. So, Milton Williams probably looks like he would be the odd man out. I mean, I heard Johnny Mack suggest Robert Quinn should be, and that's a pretty good idea, but I don't know if they're going to actually do that.
Yeah.
It's been kind of surprising they haven't gotten a whole lot out of Quinn. It figured when they signed him, like he only had the 1 sack in Chicago, but he was playing like 68 or 70% of the snaps. So you figure, he might be more productive if you, rotate him a little bit more, reduce the snaps and everything like that. But yeah, that hasn't really worked out so well just yet. And I mean, if you were gonna do it based on who deserved to sit out the most, it'd probably be Quinn. But it looks like it'd probably be Milton Williams.
Yeah, and Robert's interesting because he also faced a ton of double teams in Chicago, which I think was the Eagles' thought process in saying, well, he's not going to see double teams here. And that's been the case, but hasn't been able to generate the pressure that they would have desired. And a little bit of a disappointment. So most things have worked out for the Eagles this year. At least that trade early on has not. But, when you're 10-1, you start to nitpick, Martin. So we're to the nitpicking portion of the program. Special teams. Yeah, we got to talk to Michael Clay earlier this week, the kickoff return issue. And the thing is, it hasn't been consistent. 1 week it might be kick coverage. One week they might give up a fake punt. One week they might have a blocked field goal. 1 week it might be the return issues, their own return issues. But each week it's something on special teams. Is it just to the point of, hey, we're 10-1 with bad special teams? What's the big deal? Or do they really have to focus in on tightening up this group as a whole?
It's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I can't even count how many times Michael Clay, went to the phrase, we're 10-1 . So,
Yeah.
there are a lot of
Well,
other
yeah.
teams who'd
He,
like to be
he
in our
kept pointing to
position.
that, huh?
Yeah.
When you had your
Yeah,
media
probably like
availability,
4 or 5
just in
times.
case anybody didn't know that the Eagles were 10-1, he
Yeah.
threw that out there a couple times.
Well, they
huh?
were
Yeah.
10-1. What would Jim Schwartz used to say, Martin? It said, what we'd ask him how your defense is playing.
Oh yeah,
He'd say 7-3, 4-6,
yeah.
whatever.
It was
10-1,
more like
10-1.
7-8 or
Yeah,
something. Yeah,
yeah,
10-1.
exactly.
So I mean, he's got a point. I mean, if you look at if you look at other teams, I mean, there are much bigger issues than special teams and everything like that. And it just depends on how you look at it. Like, a lot of people break it down into thirds, like offense is a third, defense is a third, and special teams is a third. But I would argue that offense and defense are more than a third, and special teams is probably less than a third, maybe like 40-40-20, something like that. But yes, I mean, ideally you'd like to be better in special teams than the Eagles are. I mean, their kickoff coverage the other night was pretty bad. They gave up like 3 long returns. And like John was saying, like something always seems to break down every week, whether it's getting a punt blocked or giving up a long punt return or not returning very well themselves, which they're also pretty bad at. But, I mean, there isn't a whole lot they can do right now. I mean, if you want to put a starter back in there, yeah, you could, a starter or 2 back in there. Yeah, you could do that. And I think, Avonte Maddox's injury is, this is kind of one of the areas where you see the effects of not having Avonte Maddox, because he was always a really good special teams player. And even as a starter, well, I mean, as a nickel
Yeah, that's
corner,
how he got hurt, covering
yeah,
that punt
I
in
mean,
Houston. Yeah.
that's exactly it. Like, he's one of the starters who was a solid special teams guy. And I think not having him not only hurts them, at the nickel spot, it also hurts them on special teams. So,
By the way, real quick, Martin, we haven't talked about the return game as much recently because the coverage has turned into the issue, but it's gone back and forth. Every once in a while, I'm flipping on a different game when the Eagles play so much at night. You're able to watch some other games. I see Miami putting Tyreek Hill back there, returning punts. The Eagles did it with Devonta Smith. Why not do it? Where is this evidence that, you're going to get hurt on punt returns? If Tyreek Hill can be back returning a punt, anybody in the NFL should be able to go back and return punts. Anybody. Yeah. Why aren't the Eagles? They did it on kickoff returns. They're finally on Boston Scott. Now, Jody knows I said from day one, just put Boston Scott back there. They tried Quez Watkins. He can't do it. Britton Covey, he can't do it. Not that Boston Scott is great, but they're a little bit better on kickoff returns now that they finally put Boston Scott back there. They're better on punt returns when Devonta Smith is back there.
Yeah.
Why not use it?
I'm surprised they haven't. I think it was the Green Bay game. I was thinking to myself, it was early, maybe the second quarter. I'm like, this would be a good spot for Devonta Smith to go back there and return the kick, return the punt. And, still Britton Covey. I don't understand that. And, they do have Greg Ward on the practice squad. I mean, if they're that disappointed in Covey, or they could always elevate Greg Ward, have him return a punt. I mean, he's not going to return a punt like 69 yards or whatever for a touchdown, but I would feel a lot more secure with him returning a punt than maybe Britton Covey. It's always one of the things the Eagles did so well, like back in the day, was they would put Deshaun Jackson back there. I mean,
yeah,
Miracle in the Meadowlands Part 2 and all that doesn't happen if Deshaun Jackson isn't back there returning that punt. So
yeah, Britton Covey's back there.
I'm surprised they haven't used Devonta Smith more. I think they might have used him once or twice all year.
Yeah.
you know?
All right, Martin, one last
that
question.
gave you an indication. Sorry, Jody. That gave you an indication that they were willing to do it, and all of a sudden they're not willing to do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. But sorry, Jody, go ahead.
I just want to ask one last special teams question. I swear we'll get off special teams. Michael Clay pointing to the fact that they're 10-1. If you're one of the special teams coverage guys and you saw the tape and they broke it down for you and the Packers returned the ball from 8 yards deep in the end zone and got it out to midfield, that should be bothering you until you hear your coach go, yeah, we're 10-1. If you're a player on that coverage unit, don't you say, yeah, we're 10-1. I'm not going to sweat it. I don't have to put extra time or effort in. We're 10-1. Coach says so. We're good. Do you run the fear of doing that when that's your defense?
Yeah, and you also look at the other guys on your roster. I mean, if they had somebody better, they'd be using them by now, you know? So if you're one of those guys saying, oh, yeah, we're 10-1, our coach is using that defense, I don't have to worry about anything. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of solutions. You're not going to like sign a guy off the street just for special teams if you can't contribute anywhere else. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, they are what they are, and you just got to hope that, you know, it doesn't cost them a game, especially in the playoffs, because, you know, any little slip up there and that could be the end of your season.
Certainly happened that way with the Packers in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
All right, Martin, more pressing is, can John made a smart move the other day, say he's going to take the under on the Eagles rushing for 360 this week. That's not the rushing stat I worry about. Is Derrick Henry going to go for $125 against this team? No Jonathan Gannon's defense, know his philosophy, know how he's going to deploy his players. They may just say, all right, Derrick, as long as you're not getting 200, we're okay with that. If he goes for 125 plus, does that make this a game the Eagles could lose?
Depends how many carries he needs to get to that 125 plus. You know, he averages, I mean, everybody knows that the Titans are going to run. So that's no secret. I mean, their passing game isn't very good. I mean, they miss A.J. Brown tremendously. I mean, Treylon Burks has potential. He's the guy they drafted, you know, when they traded A.J. to the Eagles. But it's not, I mean, it's not the same. You can key in on the running game, and the Eagles are obviously better equipped to do that now with Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh and possibly with Jordan Davis coming back than they were 3 or 4 weeks ago when Davis first got hurt. So, you know, if it takes like Derrick Henry 40 times to get those 120 yards, I mean, you can live with that. That's 3 yards a carry, you know, it's not going to kill you. I mean, but if he's doing it, like if he's breaking off like 12, 15-yard runs, you know, they're going down, marching down the field and scoring, yeah, that's going to be a problem. But there's no secret as to what the Titans are going to do. They're giving the ball to Derrick Henry, and they're going to run the ball. And, you know, the Eagles have to show that they can stop it. And that's going to be the big question about Sunday's game.
Yeah, are we too fearful of Derrick Henry at this point because of the way the Eagles play defense? If you look at his last 3 games, I think it was the Broncos, 19 for 53. Packers, 28 for 87.
Right.
Bengals last week, 17 for 38. This offensive line isn't that good in Tennessee. And I shouldn't say that. The tackles aren't good. The interior's okay. You know, are we looking too much at the old Derrick Henry, the apex Derrick Henry, when he rushes for, you know, 200, 220, 230? You see some of the big playoff performances. You say, wow. You know, it's almost an aesthetic thing, Martin, because when he gets going, he looks so powerful and it looks so dominating. But at the end of the day, they have not run the ball that effectively. They run it a lot because they have to run it. But everybody knows they're running it, as you pointed out, so it makes it a little bit easier. Nobody's scared of Brian Tannehill, as you brought up. Treylon Burks starting to develop a little bit, but he's not A.J. Brown. Is it just Eagles fans are fearful of the running game, so they're fearful of Derrick Henry?
Well, I think they're fearful of what happened in the running game. When Davis first went out, the next couple of opponents had big rushing games against the Eagles. Damian Pierce with Houston, Washington pretty much.
But I would argue, Martin, Brian Robinson did not. They gave up 3.1 yards per carry. The longest run they gave up in that game was 11 yards.
Yeah.
They faltered in other areas, which I think
third down conversions on the ground. I don't care whether it goes for 3.1, 6.8, 1.8. If it's 3rd and 1, you can't stop them. That's not a good defense.
It wasn't just third down run. It was
if you're averaging 3 yards a carry, though, 1st and 10, you're down to 2nd and 7. 2nd and 7, you're down to 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. 3rd and 3, you can do pretty much anything. I mean, you can't defend it. I think even Darius Slay said that after that game. It's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. It's hard to play defense in that situation. And that's what Washington was in. I mean, I think their 3rd down conversions were were they 12 for 16 at one point? I think they ended up 12 for 21.
And I think that was the bigger issue, the situation.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can give up 3 yards a carry like they did against Washington, but they also ran it 50 times, so they had a lot of 3rd and short situations, and you can convert that pretty easily, even if you pass the ball, The thing is with Derrick Henry is, well, I like to look at it like the Eagles, for example. They ran for all those yards against the Packers, but the Packers had to respect the Eagles' passing game. I mean, Jalen Hurts has been having an MVP caliber year. He gets the ball to A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith. I mean, the Packers have to account for that. The Eagles don't really have to account for Ryan Tannehill beating them. I mean, he might, but it's not the same. And Derrick Henry, they know they're going to put eight guys in the box to try to stop Derrick Henry, and take
I don't think they are. That's the
who's
point.
going to put 8 guys in the box? Not the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, they don't do that. They don't do that. They want to play the light boxes. But here's what I'm getting at. This is probably the better question. So I'll throw it to both of you guys. If I tell you right now, we're on what day are we? I never know
Thursday.
what day we're on. Thursday.
December 1st. Happy December.
Happy December to all.
Oh, yeah, December. Wow.
Yeah. See, Martin doesn't know either. I didn't know. Martin doesn't know.
At least one.
It all runs together. Thanks to Jody. If I told you Derrick Henry's going to run 35 times, he's going to get 3.1 yards per carry. His longest run is going to be 11 yards. Are you guys taking that? Because that is a small margin for error for Tennessee. They can win the game, but all these other things, that's the point with the Washington, the one loss. All these other things have to go wrong as well to get you to the point where you're going to win a football game by running it 35 times for 110 yards.
Right. But John, you did some pretty good slanting of the numbers. Last week, Cincinnati put 8 or 9 in the box, and they held them to 2.2 yards per carry. The week before, the Green Bay Packers put 8 or 9 in the box, and Ryan Tannehill put 2 for 350 yards. He didn't go back quite far enough. Against Kansas City, he ran 17 times for 115 yards, 6.8 yards per carry. The week before against Houston, he ran 32
you missed Denver.
times.
Denver, we're 3 in a row.
Understood. But Denver puts 8 in the box too. What did the 3 teams have in common that have actually slowed them? They'll put 8 or 9 in the box. What won't the Philadelphia Eagles do this weekend? Put 8 or 9 in the box. He rushed 2 games for 6.8 yards per carry. Which one do you think is more likely, John? He's going to rush for 2.2 yards against this Eagle defense, or he's going to rush for 6.8 yards like he did twice in the last 5 games?
Well, yeah, more likely would be 6.8, but even more likely would be somewhere in between. I don't think the Eagles are going to hold him to 3.1 yards per carry. I just bring up that Washington game because everybody focuses on it, because that was the lone loss. And everybody thinks they lost that game. Not everybody, but a lot of people think they lost that game because they couldn't stop the run. And all I'm saying is that's not the case. That's not why they lost that game. They only gave up 3-point yards per rush. They only gave up, the longest run they gave up was 11 yards. That's the only reason I bring that up. You have an ability to give Derrick Henry 4.2 yards a carry, which is the more likely scenario that's going to happen, and still beat Tennessee with the light boxes if you limit explosive plays. My concern is, can you limit explosive plays even with Ryan Tannehill and Treylon Burks, and they don't have A.J. Brown anymore, and they don't have the dynamic quarterback with Reed Blankenship and Josiah Scott? That's what I'm more concerned with. Reed Blankenship and Josiah Scott.
Here's what I'm
Martin,
more concerned
what's
with.
your biggest concern?
Go ahead, Martin.
My biggest concern, I think even if they give Derrick Henry an average of like 4 yards a game and he rushes the ball like 30 times and gets, 115, 120 yards, and they're in good shape. Like, you go back to the Washington game, if they don't fumble the ball 3 times in the fourth quarter, they win that game. I mean, as great as the Washington running game was, and averaging 3 yards a carry doesn't indicate that it was great, but it was still effective because they kept the Eagles' offense off the field. That's what Tennessee's going to want to do. They're going to want to, get first downs, long drives, sustain long drives, score a touchdown every now and then, and keep Jalen Hurts off the field. I mean, the guy's the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. He's had an unbelievable season. The Eagles' offense can score. They can drive down the field, long drives as well. They can score quickly. So you want to keep them off the field, and that's the concern. So, if Derrick Henry's, getting 30 carries a game, Tennessee is going to control the time of possession, in which case, when the Eagles get the chances, they might not get as many chances as they did against Green Bay, but when they do get their chances, they have to convert. I mean, that's going to be the biggest thing. They didn't do it against Washington. They lost the game. They did it against the Colts in the end, and they ended up winning the game. I mean, that's the only difference between them being 11-0 and 10-1 right now is, they didn't get as many chances against the Colts, and they took advantage when they did. And they're going to have to do that against Tennessee as well.
John put out a prediction earlier in the week and doubled down on it this week. He's taken under Eagles 330 yards rushing, which I think is a pretty smart move. But I'll put this one to you two. Under over, more rushing yards this week, Jalen Hurts or Derrick Henry?
I'd go Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
I mean,
Derrick Henry rushed for, 32 yards last week, and Jalen rushed for $150. So you're going to take the guy who rushed for 30 as compared to the guy who rushed for $150, huh?
Well, Mike Vrabel to me is a very good defensive head coach.
Yeah.
Jim Schwartz is down there as a senior defensive assistant. So you kind of know they're about stopping the run first and foremost.
They do a good job of it too.
We were talking to one of the Eagles offensive coaches, Martin knows, and they were like, they're not going to stop it, so we're going to keep doing it, run it. They were kind of scratching their heads on what Green Bay was trying to accomplish defensively as well. I don't think Tennessee's going to play that way where you say, I don't know what the hell they're trying to do, but I think they're going to be very focused on limiting Jalen Hurts' running, especially coming off last week's game. Martin?
Yeah, I agree. And that's what makes this game so interesting is, you got A.J. Brown, as much as he said yesterday that he's going to approach it like any other game. I mean, he wants to go crazy against the Titans, and the Titans' defensive game plan is probably focused on stopping the Eagles' running game. So how can the Eagles beat the Titans? It's through the passing game, and if A.J. Brown has a big game, that's going to be a pretty interesting feather in his cap.
I know neither one of you guys are as into this as I am, and I'm relatively admitting I'm not sure why this is the case. This opened up as a wagering line with the Eagles favored by 6.5. It's come down to 5 basically across the board, and in at least one place it's down into the 4s, which surprises me. The Eagles,
I didn't even know that. to be honest.
That's
That
why
surprises me.
That's why I said this is something that I would probably more often have an answer for. But I'm telling you, I don't have an answer because usually when the line moves like that, it has something to do with injuries. That somebody's going to miss a game. Statement, guy's been put on IR. Thought he could play. Looking doubtful. If anything, the Eagles' injury news has been better than expected. So I don't know of any Titan guy who was looking like he was out now looks like he's going to play. You're surprised that the Eagles are only a 5-point favorite against Tennessee this weekend, guys?
I would think like some of that has to do with not having Dallas Goedert in there. I mean, when you look at the Eagles,
but they didn't have Dallas Goedert in there when they set the line at 6.5.
Maybe it's CJ. Maybe it's CJ. But they were also.
Did you really think there was a chance on Monday that CJ Gardner could play this week?
No, I didn't.
No,
maybe
nobody who knows the Eagles or football did.
Maybe it's just Tennessee losing. Maybe that affects it. Coming in a little bit more focused, a little bit more
hungrier. Okay,
hungrier. That's all I could think of. That concerns me. Anytime when you lose a game, and that was a big loss for Tennessee because. What they went through last year is the number 1 seed, losing to Cincinnati in the playoffs, so disappointing. Then they do it again. They're going to be ultra focused in this game, trying to get back on the right path. That's all I can think of. That's the only thing I can think of.
I don't know either. I mean, I know the Eagles haven't been like as heavily favored in the past few weeks because they haven't had Goddard. I mean, maybe they have questions about the Eagles' offense and everything like that. But yeah, for it to drop that much in the course of a week seems kind of strange when nothing new has really happened.
All right, prediction from you, Martin. If an Eagle tight end is going to catch a pass this week, is it just a given that it's Jack Stoll? Could Calcaterra? Did Calcaterra catch one last week for like 2 yards?
I think it was
2.
Negative 2. Yeah.
Negative 2.
Yeah.
Oh,
he did catch one.
So his 2 catches this year have been 40 and -2. You talk about the 2 ends of the spectrum. They get anything else out of their tight ends this week, or is it just that much more to A.J. Brown to try and replace Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, I think they go pretty exclusively with the 11 personnel, the 3 wide receivers and everything. Stahl plays like what, 80%? He's been playing.
Yeah, he's been playing a ton. Yeah.
So, but I mean, they primarily use him for blocking. He might catch a pass or 2, but it's going to be the 3 wide receivers. It'll be AJ, Devonta, and Quez Watkins will get some opportunities, and Jack Stoll will be used to help protect Jalen Hurts, and maybe Calcaterra, Tyree Jackson get a few chances here and there, but I don't see the tight ends like having a Dallas Goedert type production game.
No. All right. At M. Frank NFL, last one for me, Martin. We've kept you too long. I apologize. Read Martin, DelawareOnline.com, Delaware News Journal. It is Delaware football against South Dakota State. Dallas Goedert's South Dakota State. What the heck are they? Jackrabbits?
Jackrabbits. Yep,
Jackrabbits. Poor Delaware. Do they have a chance against the mighty Jackrabbits?
No, they do not. They played.
You just buried them before they kick it off, Martin. Don't do that to the home state team.
Dude, they played South Dakota State in May of 21 in the spring semifinals, and they got creamed like 33-3. South Dakota State's the number 1 team in FCS and everything. They're playing at home. It'll probably be like 20 degrees, and Delaware isn't as good as they were that one year when they went there for the semifinals. So it's not going to be close. I don't think Delaware's much of a chance.
Blue Hens. You heard it here first. Blue Hens win this weekend. Martin, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on, spending as much time with us as you did. We will certainly be punching you up again. We'll talk to you down the road, big guy.
All right. Always a pleasure. Take it easy, guys.
Martin Frank
Thanks,
here
Mark.
with us on Birds 365. We know our guy from Bleeding Green Nation, BLG, is the biggest of the Eagles beat reporters. Is Martin number 2? Is he the second tallest guy? Or am I missing? Johnny Clark.
No, Jimmy's John Clark. Yeah, no, Martin's he's probably 6'1"ish,
Okay.
6 foot. He's not overly tall. BLG's a power forward.
Yeah.
Johnny Sunshine's a small forward. Jimmy's a small forward. Jimmy's 6'3", 6'4".
Is Kepsky 6'3"?
Yeah, he's tall.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
I thought Martin might be as tall. All right. We're playing the power game here on Birds 365. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Joining us next hour, we're going to get a specific Tennessee insight. Teron Davenport, who was with us way back at the beginning of the season. We previewed a couple of teams, all the teams on the Eagles schedule. So we talked Eagles Titans way back in August. He's going to join us again since they are now on the schedule coming up on Sunday, Tennessee versus Philadelphia. Teron Davenport is going to join us about 20 minutes from now, thereabouts. But I got a couple more things I want to run by Johnny Mack. So stick around here on Birds 365.